You may have heard of stock splits. The stock splits are kind of cool things. So what is happening with a stock split, right? So first off, what it means is your stock is splitting or increasing. You're getting more shares of stock. So if I own 3 shares of stock and we have a 2-for-1 split, now I have 6 shares of stock. So that's a good thing, right? I get more shares of stock. If for the existing stockholders. So that can be a good thing. Otherwise, you could also look at kind of diluting the whole mixture of stock out there. So that's a kind of a negative to it. But most folks look at stock split as a good thing because they're getting more shares. Here's a better example for you on a 2-for-1 split. So sometimes you'll hear about a stock split where it's like, oh, it's a 2-for-1 split, or it might even be like a 3-for-1 or a 4-for-1. But the most common is like a 2-for-1, and the 3 and 4 acts the same way. It's just more splitting. So a 2-for-1 split, if let's say you own 100 shares of a stock, right? So you own 100 shares of this stock. And a 2-for-1 split would say after the split, you now own 200 shares of that stock. You don't have to do anything with that. It's all of a sudden, wow, I own more stock. My statement will say I own more stock. And in the old days when they actually had stock certificates, paper things you could put on the wall or put in your safety deposit box, they would actually send you another stock certificate, so with these additional shares you own. You're like, well, great. I have 200 shares. I'm twice as rich, right? Isn't that terrific? It doesn't work that way. Because when a stock splits, not only do you get the double in the shares, but the share price goes down an equal amount. So let's say in this example, when it's 100 shares at $50 worth $5,000, let's say, we use US dollars for the sake of argument. It could be rupees, it could be whatever your currency is for a stock that's in whatever country. But let's use dollars just to keep it simple at this point. If you own 100 shares at $50 a share, you own $5,000 of stock. You now have a 2-for-1 split. How it works is you now have 200 shares, but your stock price has gone down the equal amount to offset that, or it's now worth $25 a share for that stock, or your same $5,000. So the key takeaway on this is when a stock split happens, I get more shares, but my actual value, I don't have actually more wealth or more money in that. Now I have more shares and as share prices go up, well then my wealth will go up or down, my wealth will go down. But I basically own more shares. Now the cool thing about that, particularly if it's like a dividend paying stock, if I have more shares, I get a dividends per share. So if they pay out $1 worth of dividends per share and I have 100 shares, well I got $100 in dividends. But now I own $200, so now when I get paid, that dividend might be $200 as far as with the dividend. So that might be something that's very good, right? So depending on how they set up the dividend. So with a stock split, I get more shares, but I don't have more value in the total dollar amount. So why do companies do this? Why even bother with doing stock splits at all? I mean, for the company, it doesn't change their value or anything like that. It's the same. For the shareholder, it's the same. It's the exact same amount of money. Yeah, I got more shares, but it's the same amount of money. So why do companies do that? Well, so a lot of companies' value does not change. The price doesn't go down. Their price might be really actually rising. And for many companies, they're like, boy, if our price gets too high, that regular retail investor, that regular investor like you and I, they might have trouble coming up to buy a $300, piece of stock. They would rather buy maybe 10 of a $100 piece of stock or 30 of some other, $5 stock or whatever it might be. Stockholders, especially at the individual level, like just lower amounts, especially if it's like under $50 US, they tend to like that. So in order to kind of almost, not want to say manipulate, but in order to adjust that price down, what they'll do is they'll do a stock split. And as we saw, it went from $50 a share to $25 a share in our example. Well, that might be more palatable for people who are buying stock. Maybe the stock is at $200 a share. They do a 2-for-1 now. It's at $100. Well, that's maybe more easy for investors to get their heads around and be willing to buy it. So the whole idea is a lower price is more attractive and easier for small investors. The values are all actually the same. It's just easier for that smaller investor. And by making it easier for the smaller investor, their hope is that that will then drive the stock price up. Because remember, the company valuation around stock price is important, and these managers and CEOs and folks, they own stock too. They get stock options, they get all sorts of things. They want to see the stock go up. They want to see their company, be featured as far as a good stock company. So that's important to them, and it's important to their shareholders. So to serve their shareholders, they're like, we'll do a 2-for-1 split. We'll lower our price. We'll drive in hopefully more retail or smaller investors, and that'll then drive our price up because we got more people wanting to buy. It's that supply and demand, buying versus selling. So people are buying, it'll drive the stock price up. When you look at big or institutional investors, big banks or big institutions are managing portfolios, it means nothing to them to drop $300,000, a big mutual fund to buy $300,000 of a stock in one moment, basically, or in one day. That means nothing to them for these big institutional investors. So it doesn't matter to them if the stock is $400 or $500 versus $25. It's really more of a play for that smaller retail investor. And as a smaller retail investor, once again, you and I, we like stock splits because if it works out and the company's stock then rises because of that and more people come in, we already own shares, great. That means we got more shares and the price increases, and that's a great thing for us. Especially as dividends and things might come along the way, owning more shares is always a good thing.